So thank you, everybody. The reason that we're doing this, we called it an enrichment session. You see on LinkedIn or whatever your social media channel of choice is, that everybody's getting guest speakers in to talk about surviving in the wilderness and blah, 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 which is brilliant. I've attended some, and I've attended one recently with David Igoe. And they're really good and really informative. Clearly, we're focusing on the world of dev primarily, and about how you can get richer from the experience of the things that we're doing. And I thought it'd be amazing if we could get a business that's actually growing in this time, that's a real user and lover of tech, and just talk through the journey. So let me start with a couple of questions, if I can, David. Let's just do the easy bit. If I could just ask you to introduce yourself, but also about your journey into tech. I think that might be useful to set the scene.
So my name's Dave Igoe. I'm head of development at AOcom. My journey into tech is very, very traditional, unfortunately. Coming through universities, doing 3 years, going into industry, starting off as a junior developer in what was a very process-heavy American corporation, writing good old C++, working my way up to the point of starting at AO as a developer, probably 6 years ago now. And progressing through the ranks from team lead to development manager to head of development, probably about 18 months ago. So
you're right, the most traditional route that people can take, although of course we're almost not anti-university, we're definitely not anti, but we're an alternative to university. And we're seeing, aren't we, the explosion of the boot camp. So maybe we'll talk about that a little later. For those that don't know AO.com. Do you call it AO.com or just AO, by the way? If you're on the inside, do you put just AO?
Fine, yeah.
Yeah. For those that don't know the AO story, I heard it when I had the tour of your business in Bolton in the good old days when you were allowed outside. But for those that don't know it, would you just kind of share the AO story? Because I think it's awesome.
Sure. So AO was an overnight success, started 20 years ago by our CEO, John Roberts. And like all good things, it was started in a pub in that he bet his mate £1 that he could sell an appliance online. And that's how the business started. So then in 2009, we bought Expert Logistics. And then in 2013, we floated on the stock market and we rebranded Appliances Online because people couldn't spell it, to AO.com. And since then, we've added more and more categories, selling everything from fridges to PlayStations, washing machines to bread makers.
Okay, obvious question. I've heard you answer it before, but first thing that pops into my head, in lockdown, whatever we call this now, I don't think it's called lockdown anymore, but in these new circumstances that we find ourselves, number one best-selling item at AO, or number 1 and 2 and 3, what did you see a spike in that might have been a surprise, or it might not be, I don't know?
Chest freezers.
Chest freezers.
So you see these people going into war measures in supermarkets, filling up the trolleys, getting internet deliveries of things that are filling their entire driveways. They've got to put this food somewhere. So the vast majority of chest freezers, when people order, they stick some notes around where they want the thing delivered, whether they're on the 5th floor of an apartment block. Vast majority where, can you put this in my garage? Can you put this in my basement? So chest freezers were up, I think, around 800%.
800%.
So then it was just normal fridges, freezers, followed by kettles and bread makers. So obviously, if the world is burning, the good old UK, make a brew, have some toast, and then just kick back. And then when people realised they actually had to do some work, people were stocking up the home offices. So laptops, keyboards, mice, lamps, all that good stuff.
I remember when we first started to buy some webcams for people who were joining our courses, and some people didn't have laptops with a webcam. I think it's almost like having Google Maps or whatever in your car now. It just comes as standard in it. But there was a kind of whole generation of laptops that didn't have one, and we tried to buy some. And I think a standard one that pre-lockdown might have been £9 or £10, kind of quite basic. Stick it on the top of. They were like 60 and 70 quid, and even then on Amazon there was a 4 or 6 week delay. And Tim Price, who you know from N Brown, told me that their number one item was home jacuzzis and hot tubs. He said whilst everyone was making a brew and making bread, they were also sat in the back garden in the hot tub. I was like, do you sell hot tubs on AO.com?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay, there's a market for you.
Yeah, and I wouldn't advise taking your toaster and kettle in the hot tub either.
No,
just
that's got disaster all over. Okay, so let's talk tech now. Now people have kind of got a grip of what the business is. Let's talk tech. Let's just do size and scale first. What size is the tech team?
The tech team, we've got around 175 people in AO Tech, spread across 25 agile development teams. So that's everything from the customer placing an order on the website. So we've got teams around search and finding a product lister, where the user selects the product they want, product page where they get more details, basket checkout team, payments team, customer service team, my account team, right the way across the journey is all bespoke and in-house development.
So do you build that in microservices then? There'll be a little team building one particular bit rather than this massive, chunky, impossible to manage, I think, code.
Be honest, we've got a mixture. Different parts of our estate are at different points in their technology journey and maturity. So, for example, our basket is a monolithic code base. You know, you'd open the solution to make a change to our basket and checkout area. It would just be one solution that you'd open and get down from Git. But because there's so much change in that area, there's so much opportunity to optimize, we've started breaking that up now. So it's a slicing of the journey. So we had one basket and checkout. Now we've got a basket, delivery, checkout, payments, etc. And it's that process of slicing up the journey so we can do more in parallel.
Right.
So it is a service orientated architecture. Typically not microservices yet, because we haven't need to change at that rate, but teams do own specific services and products. We have probably around 120 applications across AO Tech and getting closer around 600 services. And each team owns a portion of that estate. And so we operate a DevOps mentality. So it's teams, they build it, they secure it first, they ship it, and they support it 24/7. So teams create their own out-of-hours rota, because nothing drives quality better than a developer supporting their own code at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, you get good at fixing bugs, I imagine, if the alternative is staying up all night. Although I do know that lots of the devs that we work with, they do their best work at 3 a.m. They're constrained by the Gregorian calendar and the 24 o'clock that says a normal working day is 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever. It's always been a bone of contention, hasn't it, about why is that? And particularly in tech, if you're shipping product code and it just needs to be robust and you've got some deliverables, who cares at what time of day that you do it? Do you accept that as a working practice at AO?
What, Andy, is that the teams that need to support their systems 24 hours a day?
Yeah. So can you said they do their own rota. So if me and you work together, God forbid, although that'd be quite fun, I think, actually. Can I just say, no, I want to be the guy that does 8 p.m. till 8 a.m. Or is it not as simplistic as that?
We'll probably come into this in a minute. And typically, because we expect teams to support their systems out of hours, if you have an incident at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning and you're working on it for an hour, you know, we're not that type of business where we expect people to be at 9 o'clock sharp, bright and breezy. It just doesn't work like that. It's a give and take relationship. So if we're asking them to support the systems, you know, we expect them to be flexible. So if they, you know, coming in a bit later, given that you give us your own time to support the system, we do pay as well for the inconvenience. So teams are on a standard cost to support a system out of hours for the week. And one of the things we do have is a system called a blameless postmortem or root cause analysis. So if something breaks, it's not about who broke it. It's about how do you improve the system so it's more robust. And the only way of getting to what's really gone wrong is removing the notion of blame. That's why it's blameless. So the whole team come into the office the next day, they create a timeline and sort of unpick it like a crime scene. Was it because this report increased? Was it because this other service went down? What does it happen? And so we talk around all the interactions and dependencies of the systems. And then the main thing is to identify what we could have done to find out about it quicker. So do we need to improve our alerting? What could we do to improve it so there's less chance of it happening again? So do we have multiple servers, for example, if one goes down, or do we have load balancing? And then we ensure these improvements go into one team's backlog as a top priority. So no matter what they're working on, if we're asking people to get up at 3 in the morning, it's only fair that we give the time to go and improve the systems so they're not woken up the following day or the following day. And these improvements of our systems lead to improvements in productivity, because you know you're not picking up things that are broken, you're working on new things and new features.
Someone's just put in the chat that they love the idea of a painless and blameless post-mortem culture. I imagine that is a big shift, because human nature takes all right. If you know that it wasn't you that broke it, there's a level of, okay, it wasn't me, so I feel like I'm off the hook. I'm looking forward more now to the investigation because I'm sure it wasn't me. How long does that take to change kind of a mentality shift? Or is it just as easy as telling them that's what we're going to do and we're doing it?
We probably introduced this about 3 years ago, and like any sort of agile process, you start small with one team, and then when they're getting the benefits of it, they champion it. And it's because it's the people that benefit from it talking about it, then it's not a management initiative that you're pushing. They're talking about the benefits, the improvements. They talk about getting more sleep. So it drives the right behaviors.
Yeah, there's a real tangible, easy to associate with benefit, right?
Yeah, definitely. And because it's a group getting around the board, one of the things it helps with is understanding the systems. So for example, juniors or people that have just joined the team, no matter what their experience is, can get involved in these postmortems, and you really find out how your systems work when they break. So by hearing people map them out, talk about them, why they went wrong, why they put the improvements in, it helps everyone build up that shared understanding of that system. And it's fascinating when you go in there, everyone thinks that they all know what happened. And as soon as they start talking to each other, those different perspectives, I didn't know about that. What, you received that alert? Oh, and it's just, you know, that's when the magic happens. It's really, really useful.
Yeah, and you know, when I said what I just said, now you've just repeated that, I feel almost a bit embarrassed, because saying, well, I know it wasn't me, so I'm keener to go into the meeting. Well, actually, you don't know that it wasn't you until you're in that meeting, because it's not like you might have written a bum line of code off. It could just be something in that process that looking back led people to make a decision or jump down a rabbit hole or so on and so forth. It's really interesting. Somebody else asked about agile teams, so I thought I'd just cover it what's the AO definition of an agile team?
it's a team that owns, lives and breathes a mission and objective within that estate. So take on my account team, for example, they live and breathe my account, getting more people signed up to my account, adding more features to my account. Yeah, it's not just moving tickets across the board. They're thinking of new ideas all the time to improve it. So when I say an agile team, it's not just about Scrum or the process. I think it's getting that that connectiveness, if that makes sense, to the product that you're building. So it's not just a job; it just becomes something that you enjoy doing. And you go home at the end of each day and you feel as though you've achieved something or improved something.
So I know the kind of model that's quoted a lot as being the originator of maybe that kind of thinking or ownership is the Spotify model, where their pods and squads were built under pretty much a ticker that showed the value, financial value, that the work that team, pod, squad was doing and how that benefited the whole of the business by saying the app or the service that we've built or whatever the component part is has generated X amount of revenue. Do you do that at AO?
Yeah, so we've moved from project teams recently to product teams. So although teams previously had ownership of their estate, such as my account, projects or improvements or features were thought up outside of the team. So fed up on it into a roadmap, for example. So what we've taken is the people that were coming up with the ideas outside the team doing the thinking, pick them up and then drop them and put them inside the team. So product owners. So the notion of a team should be that it's cross-functional and they own the whole. So the idea should be generated in the team, the execution should be in the team, and we've also put an analyst, a commercial analyst in the team as well, so they know the impact of the team. So they really are a autonomous unit, effectively, that we give them an objective each quarter, and the idea is that they go and do whatever's needed to go and fulfill that objective. So it could be improve MDA by 10%.
So I know is there a financial motivation or just a satisfaction motivation that sits underneath that?
Mixed. It shouldn't be about all objectives shouldn't be about generating cash and generating money. We think if you do the right thing by the customer, then the rest will follow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I agree. My sales team wouldn't agree, but
yeah, we have a mix of some teams which are financial incentives. So, perfect example, basket team, for example, increase conversion from X to Y. You know, do whatever magic, whatever friction you want to improve to go and make it easier so customers can convert better. That's an easy one. But my account one, for example, should be about getting the number of sign-ups increased in my account. Part of that might be giving them a reason to come in there to you know, so they want to create on my account. It shouldn't just be a go do this thing. The team's got to run through experimentation and find ways to improve that objective.
Okay, so I'm just going to kind of change tack a little bit. Thank you for that. That's interesting, really interesting. Pre-COVID, Corona, what was the work from home policy at AO, or just the general working patterns, let's say, either or both?
Yeah, true story. So my management team, we run sort of Kanban as well. And sitting in our backlog was revise the work from home policy. And we never quite got to it because there's always other things that were more important. But it was very much flexibility, but it was by exception, to be honest. So if people had a delivery, they could work from home. If they wanted to work from home for an afternoon, if they had an appointment, say commuting back in, all that was fine, no problem. We had flexible working hours. So people wanted to drop the kids off, they could so come into work. But being a sort of old school agile traditionalist, I've only probably mandated one thing in work, and that's physical Kanban boards, because the tactile, because you get that sense of achievement of moving a ticket across the board, and they're a meeting hub, and they allow you to change your process quick and easy. So they are like the true definition of agile. And we wanted people to be in work and to collaborate, and that's one of the main reasons we were resistant to going full remote. We just didn't know how we could preserve that.
You are allowed to admit that, you know. That's the new world that we're in, aren't we? People saying, no, I wanted people in, and I needed to see them. That's been okay forever, right? So it has obviously changed a little bit. I remember I'd looked around and I saw, you kind of were very kind and gave me a tour, and I saw all those physical Kanbans, and I saw the different teams congregating around them. And the atmosphere was palpable, right? You could feel it. It was exciting. Mm-hmm. And because I'm who I am, I was thinking, I want to be the guy that picks that piece of paper up and moves it across, right? That would have been a big thing for me. So I get it, because at Code Nation, we started off all physical Kanban. I remember all of our windows were the classic dev house. And then the tech guys, led by Stuart, who I hope's on this, said, no, Trello is the way forward. And we use Trello, and we do, and I understand why it's good. But I personally don't think it's quite as good as that. So, okay, you had everybody in, around. The one thing that they had to have was a physical Kanban, and then, bam, work from home. So all of the rules about how you wanted people to be together, and all of the timelines that you put in, you can have some core hours. I know that, you know, you've got to be in by 10 and you've got to be there till 3 or 4 or whatever. How did you get everybody to work from home? How did you physically do that? From a tech perspective, how did you do that? And then for a business that's got, what did you say, 170 odd devs, how did you make that communication work in the early bit, the earliest part?
So the dev part was probably the easy bit, to be honest. It's because all the developers have got laptops, because they've got to be able to work from home if, you know, an incident at 3 o'clock in the morning. But we've got 3,500 people in AO that we have to mobilize and work from home. All of our call center had desktops. So we've got
of course, yeah,
6 to 7 call centers across 2 countries. All our sales team in Manchester are all based in office. And if you think the culture of an IT department is important, the culture of a call center and sales team is even more important, and trying to preserve that when you're working remotely. So the first thing we had to do was go on a mass rebuilding process of laptops. We literally had a human conveyor belt of building. I can't remember, but I think it was about 500 to 600 laptops. So we kitted out the room, people had to walk up with a ticket. They got a laptop built, walked around the corner, picked up a laptop bag, checked if they could sign in, got a spare charger, went out the door, and there was just a procession of people around the department for the best part of a week as we got department by department mobilized to work from home. The call center was massive because we had to all operate on VPN using our call center software because it was all on site. Thankfully, we just rolled out Microsoft Teams a couple of weeks before, which again has just been invaluable because it's, you know, now all asynchronous messaging communication with Teams.
Wow. That was just really good timing, right? That was just pure chance. Somebody with a higher power had just gifted that, saying you're probably going to need this in a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you have done? What would have been the solution? Do you know, if you didn't have Microsoft Teams, how would you have made that work? Would you have to just go and get Microsoft Teams?
I think so, because it fits in our technology stack at the moment. Some teams use Slack, but this is when you remote, you need to start standardizing things. even something as simple as setting up a messaging client on a laptop. You don't want to set up 2 to 3 messaging clients or internet browsers. You want them all to be the same, sort of cookie cutters. Because if they're going to support it out of hours or remotely, it needs to be the same build. So it needs to be Teams on everyone's machine. This is the VPN. This is the internet browser. Just go.
Okay. So everyone's now at home. The devs, it was easier because they had the kit. Well, let's just focus in on the kind of working practices of the devs. So we've got 70 odd now watching this webinar, which is brilliant, of which I'm going to presume the majority of them are our devs. So, you know, we don't call our people students, we call them devs because they are from day one. Whether they can dev or not, the brain set says they're here to be a dev. So let's just talk about how you make it work working remotely in a massive dev business to avoid having people disappearing off grid and all that, first of all. And you know, I can use the word, and I mean it in the truest sense, to make sure that people's mental health is looked after. Even when we've seen it in our classrooms, we force people to take a break. We force people to do some yoga. And on Friday, I don't know whether you've joined in yet or not, but we do a PT session and stuff. And we do it for mental health reasons more than anything else. Get up, give your brain a little rest, get your feet out of the rabbit hole, because clarity of thought will come back, and it's just good. How do you deal with that now?
So one of my fears going into this was a regression back to the stereotype as a software developer of sitting there in solitary confinement, just tapping away on a keyboard, just churning through tickets. And what we try to encourage is teams to collaborate and work together. The notion of pair programming is all about 2 people working on a problem together, bouncing ideas off each other, and not going down sort of rabbit holes. You know, everyone's got to that point where they've been working on a problem or code and they've just got stuck. And when you're on your own developing, it's so easy just to get to the point where you just think, I've exhausted all Stack Overflow, I've tried all the articles, I just don't know what else to do. And so often you just need a conversation with another person, and it can just unblock you like that. And when companies talk about isn't pair programming.
So do you assign the partner, or however you would describe it, or is that kind of self-policing?
It's self-policing in a team at this scale. It's got to be. So whether teams want to do mob programming or pair programming, the encouragement is always not to develop in isolation, and also it's to avoid bus factors. So it's all too easy for an expert in a team to always work on a type of ticket or a domain or a service that they like. And it's so easy for them all of a sudden to become the expert in that. And then if they get hit by a bus, you've lost all that knowledge. You know? Obviously, we want to do it in other ways as well. But that's what I was most fearful of. So we, first of all, made sure that we moved all our agile process remotely. So we did do some management checklists. So tell me when you've moved all your stand-ups remotely and booked them in the diary. Tell me when you move all the sprint planning. More importantly, and the process, which I think is more important than any is retros. So get your retros in your diary, because if you've got problems within a team, that's where you're going to solve it and unpick it. If you're not efficient working remotely, if you've got mental health problems or you're struggling with morale, that's the safe environment which to raise these things. So make sure you get your retros in the diary. We did some things at a department level as well. So moved a lot of our remote learning online to Teams. So we've created something called a learning hub, so people can access workshops just to break the day up, so they can learn things like Terraform or Agile practices. And we did some fun stuff. So we've created a Teams channel called the Brew Point. So at any, just as you would in the office, you can wander over to the brew point and have a chat with someone, and sort of force some of that human conversation.
Yeah, we have a thing called coffee and quarantine. So the twice a day, we have them for the staff, we have them for the devs, we have a pastoral care person who job literally is, if you want to have a quick chat about anything, I'm here. We found the take up of those not massive actually. So our staff do the coffee and quarantine. The devs, not as much as we'd like. Have you started to force breaks or not yet? Have you started to enforce some of those things?
So one of the things I was very conscious of through all of this is I talked about in one of my previous sessions, is around this normality theatre. So everyone pretending this is all just normal and the same. And you see on LinkedIn all these motivational quotes around, you should learn a skill or you should do all this. So I kind of felt it was my responsibility as a leader to say, you know what, this isn't normal circumstances. So I started sending emails to the department talking around some of my experiences. So I'm working at home with 3 kids with a builder in the next room at the moment, talking about how I'm blocking time in my diary to do things such as, feed my children so they don't go feral before 2 o'clock. To have some thinking space, just to get off Teams so I don't go absolutely insane with video conference fatigue. And by talking about that, giving other people permission to go do the same in their calendar. Go block some time out for yourself, for your family, so you can operate over the long term, not just get through today.
It's an interesting point because Dave and I spend a lot of time, probably too much time, talking about kind of that subject, where this isn't working from home. This isn't a working from home scenario. This is enforced working from home. And I think there's a big difference in the things that you do. So my wife, who runs her own business from home, she would very happily build in 2 hours of whatever, shopping or going to the gym or doing yoga or whatever. And that'd just be totally normal. Totally normal, because her working hours are broadly whatever she wants them to be, but she will do an 8-hour day, but she might not just do it in an 8-hour block. I think what we've experienced is trying to teach people to be a dev in a day, whereas in the classrooms or in our structure at home, back in the campus, there's loads of free time in there. If you want to get up and go make a coffee or have a donut or nip to the shops, it's never questioned. You've been to our place. If you want to go and jump on the Xbox and go and have half an hour or a couple of games of chess or read a book or put some music in your ears. I'm not sure how brilliant we've been yet at finding how you do all of the things that you do and building that time that it just feels ordinary. I think that's the next shift, isn't it, for businesses to make the working day an ordinary working day and accept that people don't just grind out 8 hours back to back over and over and over again.
And I think some of the key skills that this is forcing in lockdown, it's around the discipline of your routine. So, Junior find that when it's your habits, it's getting out for walks that give you that mental freshness. And I think that's what a lot of what's been hit is around, it's disrupted people's coping mechanisms and routines. So over time, people need to build those back up again and get in a routine that works for them, and make sure you've got a distinction between work and home. So when I'm at home, I work in the same place. I've got a shirt on, I'm literally dressed for work. How sad am I? Just so it feels different, and change into different clothes. Don't work in the bedroom. Make sure I've got a cut off at 5 o'clock. Just simple little things to make sure I've got a routine, because it's all too easy for your work and home lives to blend together. and that's not how you stay fresh and mentally focused to go and tackle some of the big architectural problems and issues that you're going to face in your day job.
So I'm conscious of time, and I've seen some questions, and I want Dave to just kind of shout them out in a minute. So I'll ask you one more thing, and then we'll perhaps do those questions, and then if we've got a couple of minutes, we can wrap up. What's the thing that you have learned that you wouldn't do if this was a brand new thing again? So is there anything that you started off doing that you now look back, even just over this short period when you've done your own retro, to say, do you know what, where were we going with that, or why did we do that, or is there any lessons or learning that we can all take?
Probably not watch YouTube videos at the start thinking I'm going to do this exercise routine every day. I think it's just cut yourself some slack. Do you know what I mean? Don't expect that you're going to operate at the same level in the current circumstance. And yeah, just give yourself some, be kind to yourself. I think that's the main thing. And coming off the back of it, coming through this whole experience, our CEO talked recently around, in 5 weeks, online buying habits have accelerated probably by 5 years. And I think our HR processes have probably accelerated to the same degree. And after this, we're already having conversations about how we don't go back to the status quo and we find the best of both worlds. So obviously, you know, kids will be back in school, etc. after this, but we can trust the teams to do the right thing. And this is what an autonomous team is about, not just owning your systems, your architecture, but ways of working, almost getting to the point now of your HR practices. So we give them options, we give them the trust, but remote first means it's an option to them. If they want to work from 3 days a week, they can work from home 3 days a week, but they need to decide as a team what the best setup is for that team to operate. But still, some practices and some things that you need to do need face-to-face communication. If you're doing a retro, if there's nothing like a whiteboard session when we're talking about architecture or system works, where you can all just get together on a whiteboard, you know, Miro and all these other tools are amazing and beautiful, but probably takes 5 times longer to work through an online tool than what you could do face-to-face. So we'll, after this, we'll probably move to remote first, and we'll give teams much more flexibility of choosing the way to work that suits them.
That was going to be my final question, and Thea put it up there. So I think what you're saying is when we are allowed, you're still going to allow people to do this. Is that going to change then how you recruit? Does that mean we're historically, like Bolton has been bursting at the seams, hasn't it? And been a big challenge that everybody who lives in the locale that you've wanted to hire probably has been interviewed or hired by now, probably. And then coming into Manchester, really expensive real estate. And again, in like the most competitive landscape of any city, I think it's more competitive than London, actually. Will this now change the way that you look at your recruitment? If I'm in Singapore and I don't mind living on the right time zone, could I work for AO? Not that I'm pitching that I want to move to Singapore, although it feels like I am now.
Yes, and we'll probably, again, take the sort of incremental approach with this. So if people can work, for example, from home 2 days a week, that means if you're commuting from, I don't know, the Midlands or wherever that might be, Newcastle, to Manchester and Bolton, you could probably do that 2 days a week. That wouldn't be a problem. So that means if we want to hire the best, we can broaden our catchment to go and get people that just want to do that a couple of times a week. I still think, and I still want to hold that option of people coming to have face-to-face conversations when needed. And don't get me wrong, conversations and communication are so much harder remote than face-to-face. And we're seeing this in Teams communication. The amount of support from managers needed to stop teams operating in silos and just getting them to talk to each other, it is really, really difficult remote. So we'd want to maintain that ability to get people on site if needed.
Okay, so before we wrap up, because we said we're going to be brutal with time, and we should try and be, Dave Muir, is there any other questions that come in that you think would make a great one to put Mr. Igoe on the spot, make him sweat a little bit before he finishes?
I think the main one that's coming through, the common theme is, what are you going to do differently going forward? And it is about recruitment. How are you going to ensure that you give your current devs the opportunity to carry on what they're doing? And also for new talent, how are you going to reach out to and attract and get new talent in this new way of working? And then so that's one question. And then the second one, if we've only got two things for you to answer, David, is one final piece of advice for all the devs that are out there that are either on this webinar or anyone that sees it in the future. What's your final bit of advice for them?
Sure. So probably do different after this. I've probably covered some of the remote working aspects. But I think a key part of that remote first is everyone's got the shared experience. So what we can't afford to happen is to have 4 people in the office and have one person on VC, because you don't have that equal experience. So if one person's remote, everyone's remote. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we've started standardizing a lot of what we do. So companies like GitHub that are remote talk about if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. So knowledge needs to be stored. And I know this goes against Agile, not needing documentation and all that rubbish. But the fact is, you just need some things written down. And this includes really doubling down on our Learning Hub, which is completely remote. So strongly believe that if you're working in development, learning should be a forever thing. It's not just about boot camp. It's not just about universities. Technology just changes rapidly, and you are always going to be reading internet articles in your spare time, in a weekend, or whatever that might be. So our Learning Hub is about getting other AOs to share their skills with each other. So every month we publish between 5 and 10 workshops. They could be anything between an hour or a day around AWS basics, or learning flow, or monitoring tools, or login, and then people can just book themselves on, and we find that's a nice contrast to just working through teamwork to invest in themselves as well.
Brilliant. Listen, it's exactly 1:45, so we'll be keen to say, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody that came and listened. So we got 78 people, which is fantastic. You've never had that big a captivated audience there before. Now most people have you on mute or done the screen down or whatever, I bet. So thank you for that. That was brilliant. And thanks, Dave, for running that for us and jumping in at the end. And if you asked a question and we didn't answer it, we'll try and follow up. We'll have this recorded, and if anybody wants it, I don't think there's any trade secrets that we've shared. It was really good. I'm very grateful. And like I said before we started, Dave, I owe you one. So call it in, whatever you think that we can do. I owe you one. Have a wonderful rest of the day. I hope the sun's shining where you are.